London to New York is 3,400 miles, the entire width of the Atlantic Ocean. Europeans spent centuries terrified to cross it. They clung to coastlines, mapped every island, built bigger ships before attempting the open water. Hawaii is 2,400 miles from the nearest inhabited land, and on the other side, 2,400 miles more. No Atlantic, no stepping stones, just the largest ocean on Earth in every direction. And someone found it, on purpose, in an open canoe. That is the fact this entire video is built around, 20 to 50 people. I wrote that number down and then just looked at it for a while. That is the genetic estimate for the founding population of Hawaii, the group that first crossed that ocean and stayed. 20 to 50 individuals, enough to fill a handful of canoes, not enough to carry significant genetic variation. Everything that followed, the civilization, the language, the navigation tradition, the culture, descended from a group small enough to fit in a school classroom. Someone found the most isolated island group on Earth anyway, twice, 200 years apart, from two different directions. The DNA of modern Native Hawaiians tells a story more complex than any version of Hawaiian history told before. Two separate founding events, a genetic bottleneck still killing Hawaiians today, and a possible contact with North America that history never recorded. This is that story. But before the DNA can mean anything, the navigation has to be understood, because the ocean they crossed is the only context that makes the genetics feel like what it actually is. The Pacific is not simply large. Large is the wrong word. The Pacific covers 1/3 of the surface of the Earth, more ocean than every continent combined with room left over. Polynesian navigators crossed it without instruments, without charts, using stars, ocean swell patterns that carry information about distant landmasses in the way they bend and reflect, bird flight patterns, cloud formations above islands not yet visible on the horizon. A navigational tradition carried entirely in the minds and bodies of the people who practiced it, not primitive, sophisticated in a way that has no real parallel in the ancient world. Ancient DNA from the earliest Hawaiian burial sites was once thought to date back as far as 300 CE. For decades, this long chronology was the academic standard, but in the last decade, the timeline has collapsed. New, high-precision radiocarbon dating from sites like Bellows Beach and New Alolo Kai has moved the clock forward nearly 700 years. The first human footprint didn't land in the 4th century. It landed between 1000 and 1200 CE. 700 years of history simply vanished from the map. But in its place, we found something much more intense. The short chronology reveals that the settlement of Hawaii wasn't a slow, accidental drift. It was a concentrated, intentional burst of deep ocean voyaging. And the DNA confirms that this window was divided into two distinct acts. First, the founding layer from the Marquesas and Cook Islands. They were the architects of the original Hawaiian society. For a century, they were alone. Then, in the 13th and 14th centuries, everything changed. Ancient DNA shows a measurable genetic shift, a new population signal appearing distinct from the Marquesan Foundation and consistent with the Society Islands, specifically Tahiti. This was a demographic transformation. The genetic signal is substantial. Multiple canoe voyages, enough people to demographically and culturally transform the existing population. Modern Native Hawaiians carry both genetic layers in proportions that vary measurably by island. Kauai, the oldest island geologically, preserves more of the original Marquesan signal. The Big Island shows stronger Tahitian influence. The genetics is not uniform. It is a map. The Tahitians didn't just add their DNA, they rewrote Hawaiian civilization, the kapu system, the complex sacred prohibitions governing every aspect of Hawaiian life. The heiau, the monumental stone temple platforms, the ali'i hereditary aristocracy. All of them appear in the archaeological record precisely when the second genetic wave arrives, not before, precisely when. Hawaiian oral tradition preserves the memory in the figure of Pa'ao, a high priest said to have arrived from a distant southern island and reformed the entire religious system. For generations, historians treated it as mythology. The DNA confirmed that the oral tradition had preserved a real historical event across 800 years of transmission without writing. 800 years of transmission without writing, and the oral tradition got it right. That has implications for how we treat indigenous historical accounts generally that go well beyond this particular story. The oral tradition remembered the transformation. The DNA recorded it. Now the question of how far these navigators actually traveled. The South American contact is no longer contested. Sweet potato. DNA analysis confirms pre-Columbian introduction of the crop to Polynesia from South America. And the directionality of movement was Polynesian outward, not South American inward. Pre-Columbian chicken bones at a site called El Arenal in Chile match Polynesian rather than European chicken genetics. Ancient DNA from pre-Columbian coastal populations in Chile contains a small but measurable Polynesian signal. The navigators who crossed to South America and returned were Polynesian. They crossed the largest ocean on Earth, made contact with a continent, obtained crops and livestock, and sailed home. Thor Heyerdahl built his raft in 1947 and sailed from Peru to the Pacific to prove the current could carry you west. The DNA proved something more interesting. The people who made the actual crossing were going the other direction. The South American link was proven by a potato. The North American link might be proven by a boat. In Southern California, the Chumash people built a masterpiece of maritime engineering called the Tomalo, a sewn plank canoe found nowhere else in the Americas but used everywhere in Polynesia. Even the name Tomalo mirrors the Polynesian word for the very wood used to build it. New oceanographic models show a conveyor belt of currents that could have carried a Hawaiian canoe to the California coast in less than 30 days. We see the same fish hooks, the same shell working techniques, and now the same ghost-like genetic signals appearing in the northwest coast. It suggests a Pacific Ocean that wasn't a barrier, but a highway, one where the exit ramps included both the tip of Chile and the forests of British Columbia. Say it plainly, the North American finding, if it holds, is the bigger story. The South American contact already happened and is confirmed. The North American one would rewrite the map. Hawaiian populations show a small but measurable genetic signal connecting them to Northwest Coast Native American populations, the peoples of what is now British Columbia and Alaska. 3 independent research groups have noted it. None has dismissed it as noise, none has confirmed it as definitive. If confirmed, the implications are extraordinary. Hawaiian navigators would have made contact with North America from the Pacific, predating European arrival by centuries, navigating the North Pacific Gyre in open canoes to reach a continent the rest of the world didn't know was there. The sweet potato proved South America. Ancient DNA from British Columbia may yet prove North America. The map of pre-Columbian human exploration is not finished. The DNA is still being read. The same navigation that produced these extraordinary contacts also produced a cost that is still being counted today. If you are Native Hawaiian and you are watching this chapter is about something more immediate than ancient DNA. Modern Native Hawaiians carry one of the lowest genetic diversities of any indigenous population in the world. The founding bottleneck, the tiny size of both founding groups, reduced the genetic variation of the entire subsequent population to whatever happened to be in the canoes that made the crossing. This is precisely measurable. The heterozygosity of Native Hawaiian populations is significantly lower than most continental indigenous populations. Type 2 diabetes rates in Native Hawaiian populations are among the highest in the world, more than double the rate in non-Hispanic white Americans. The genetic component is partially traceable to founder effect amplification of specific metabolic variants that were rare in the Marquesan source populations, but became common in Hawaii simply because they happened to be in the founding canoes. They have remained elevated ever since. The same pattern appears across multiple conditions, certain cancers, certain cardiovascular diseases, each one showing the fingerprint of founder effect amplification rather than lifestyle or environment alone. The pharmacogenomics problem is the part of this video I most wish I didn't have to include. Not because it's complicated, because it's straightforward and it's still happening. Pharmaceutical drugs are developed and dosed primarily on European ancestry populations. The drug metabolism variants in Native Hawaiian populations differ from that European baseline in ways directly traceable to the founder effect. Drugs that work correctly at standard doses in European populations can be over or under effective in Native Hawaiian patients. The healthcare system built to serve Native Hawaiians was built on genetic assumptions derived from populations whose founding history was completely different. A civilization founded by dozens of people in a handful of canoes built something extraordinary. The genetic price of that founding is still being paid 900 years later. The bottleneck explains the cost. It does not explain the full depth of what Native Hawaiians carry. For that, you have to go back much further than the canoes, 50,000 years ago. The Papuan genetic contribution to Hawaiian ancestry includes Denisovan DNA, from a separate archaic human species known almost entirely from a single finger bone found in a Siberian cave in 2010. 2010 is how recently this entered the scientific record. A species confirmed from a single finger bone, present in living people, through a chain of ancestry that crosses 50,000 years and the entire Pacific Ocean. Denisovans interbred with the ancestors of Papuan populations in Southeast Asia approximately 50,000 years ago. That DNA passed through Papuans into the near Oceania admixture that founded Polynesia, through the entire Pacific expansion, through the Marquesan founding, and sits in the cells of living Native Hawaiians today. A Native Hawaiian carries the genetic legacy of a human species we didn't know existed 15 years ago. That is not a metaphor for connection. It is a literal biological fact. 4,000 years ago, the primary ancestry of Polynesian populations traces through the Austronesian expansion, agricultural population spreading from Taiwan through the Philippines and Indonesia into the Pacific. This is the linguistic foundation. The Austronesian language family connects Hawaiian to Malay, Tagalog, and Malagasy across half the globe. Languages on opposite sides of the world, descended from the same source. Before the Pacific expansion began, Austronesian-related migrants and indigenous Papuan populations, who had lived in the islands near New Guinea for 50,000 years, came together in a founding admixture event in near Oceania that created the ancestral Polynesian gene pool. Every Hawaiian descends in part from people whose roots in those islands stretch back not centuries, but tens of thousands of years. Then the two Hawaiian layers, the Marquesan founding at 1000 and 1200 CE, the Tahitian transformation at 13,000 to 1400 CE, both documented in ancient DNA, both confirmed, out of Africa. Through the Denisovan encounter 50,000 years ago, through 50,000 years of Papuan presence in near Oceania, through the near Oceania admixture event, through the Austronesian expansion from Taiwan, through the Polynesian founding, through the Marquesas, across 2,400 miles of open ocean, then across again 200 years later from Tahiti, then to South America and back, possibly to North America. No other living population has traveled a longer, more genetically documented, more navigationally extraordinary path to where they are today. Every other civilization this extraordinary left documents. The Polynesian navigators left their record somewhere else entirely. No charts, no logs, no account of the crossing. What they left is encoded in biology, in the Denisovan sequences in living cells, in the island-by-island variation in genetic layers, in the pharmacogenomic differences that are still causing dosing errors in Hawaiian hospitals today. The record of the journey is not in any archive. It is in the people. Written records can be burned. The genome persists. The founding populations were tiny enough to fit in a classroom. The distances were incomprehensible. The achievement was without parallel in the ancient world. Every step of that journey is written in Hawaiian DNA. The Denisovan sequences, the Papuan foundation, the Austronesian layer, the Marquesan founding, the Tahitian transformation, the South American contact, possibly the North American one. They found the most isolated island group on Earth. Twice. Without instruments. Without charts. In open canoes. The ocean they crossed is still inside them. What stays with me, and I cannot source this to any paper, is that the most extraordinary navigators in human history left no written account of what they did. No logs, no maps, no record of who decided to go or what they saw when they arrived. The only document they left is biological. It is in living people. Subscribe if you want to keep reading it with me. Thanks for watching.